Mary. I'm with the Howard County Rent Stabilization Coalition. In the chat, if you can't hear anything, let people know so that, or any questions, issues, whatever, put it in the chat. We have a couple people monitoring it. So I just wanted to welcome you all. Thank you for taking time to come to this meeting today. And just wanted to remind everyone the reason that we're here is because the rent is too damn high in Howard County, and it keeps climbing. So we have, in the last 3 years alone, rent has gone up 23%, and a number of tenants we've been working with have experienced over 50% rent increases in a single year. So obviously, major issue. And I'm curious how many people in the room have personally experienced a rent increase that has been significant. Okay, thank you so much for being here. That's exactly why we're doing this. As a lot of you know, unfortunately firsthand, there's a lot at stake in this fight. People and families, many who have lived here for years, are being displaced, being pushed out of their homes. And we also know, yes?
Can you just note to me when you want me to switch
Yeah.
slides?
Yeah, go ahead. Switch now, I guess. It's fine. Yeah, it's not really relevant, but it's fine. So, yeah. Oh, people in the chat are giving some information. Thank you. As we know, also, we are not all impacted equally by this. It's primarily or most heavily our Black and brown neighbors, our seniors, people with disabilities that are impacted the worst. So this issue is very important to keep our community cohesive and together. And people should be able to stay in their homes. So it's for all these reasons that we've been mobilizing as a coalition to stabilize rent in Howard County. We know from watching the fight in Montgomery County, who recently passed a rent stabilization bill, that there was going to be a lot of pushback from developers, from different interests that want to keep allowing rent to be high and putting the cost of whatever they want to put on tenants. So together as a coalition, we came up with a couple of, you can keep this, no, go to the next slide. We came up with the idea of what we believe is a strong rent stabilization bill that will actually help tenants. So the center of that proposal is a 3% cap on overall rent increases. So the idea of that was to keep it no higher than inflation at least, but also affordable for most people. And a lot of the tenants that we've been talking to have been like, okay, even 5% is hard, and that's true. So 3% seemed like a good place for us to settle. And so while that's the center of our proposal, we have 5 other features, as you see here, that are intended to close any loopholes that could happen that we've seen in other bills, or just increasing that protection for tenants. So one of those things is no exemptions for new buildings. Again, referring to the Montgomery County bill, they have a policy where a building does not have rent stabilization until 23 years after it's built. Yes, that's a lot of years. That's a lot of years to have uncontrolled rent hikes, and that's just not good for tenants. Another thing is we wanted to make sure all renters were covered. So we didn't want any exemptions for types of housing, types of landlords. So that includes things like senior centers, even like small landlords should be covered. We want all tenants to have equal protections. Also vacancy control, which is a new thing that I learned about since joining this coalition, but basically it ensures that when a unit, an apartment is turned over to a new tenant, that cap still applies. So even when a new person signs the lease, it still is capped at 3. And we also wanted to ensure that there was strong enforcement, because it doesn't matter what we write in the bill if no one is in charge of making sure that that's followed and having consequences when it's not. And another thing that we wanted to include was limits on fees. So any other fee that your apartment can make up to basically still charge you that same amount, even though your rent is capped. So that was really important to us to make sure it was included. And you can stay there. Thanks to our coalition's efforts at public hearing and the hearings and the momentum of this issue generally, as I mentioned, Montgomery County passed a bill, Prince George's County passed a bill, and other places throughout the country have also passed rent stabilization bills. But so the county executive introduced a bill for Howard County about a month ago. And as you'll hear from Blair later, this bill is not it. It is not strong enough to adequately protect tenants. So if you haven't heard, there is a public hearing this coming Monday at 7 p.m. That's November 20th at 7 p.m. on Monday. In the past, we have made really great progress by having tenants or just people passionate about this issue testify at public hearings. And that was really successful in getting a council member to introduce an amendment on rent stabilization to the general plan. And we believe that it was part of the momentum to get Calvin Ball to introduce his own bill. So, and from my understanding, these public hearings were not specifically focused on rent. So imagine how much of an impact we can make if we come to a bill or a public hearing about rent stabilization and we have tenants show up and share their stories there. So I just want to emphasize like how much of a difference your voice can make and your story can make in that way. So if you have not already spoken to Jake or anyone over there, public testimony, super important. It's what we're really going to keep pushing tonight. And Jake also made a template for you so you can easily kind of structure what you want to say. And we're also going to offer help, individualized help if we can, if you would like help writing your testimony or anything like that. So I think, oh, and also you can use tonight as a practice round. We're gonna, when we open the floor to tenants to speak, you know, we're gonna time it about 3 minutes. So if you wanna just test some things out, see what you might wanna say, that would be a great time to do that. Yeah, so now I will pass it to Blair, who will tell you about the bill that was introduced by the county executive and why we need to amend it.
Okay, so in taking a look at the bill that
I want to
was,
speak up a little bit.
so in looking at the bill that that was introduced by the county executive, there are some things that align with what we've been pushing for, and some things that do not. So if you look at 4, 5, and 6, luckily vacancy control, enforcement, and restrictions on fees are already in the bill in some form, which would be a great thing to have in there. So that's not really what we're focusing on. At this point, it's the first 3 points where we think some improvements need to be made to the bill to make sure that this bill is actually protecting all of our renters. So one issue with this bill to start with is that it's temporary. It is set to expire after only 4 years. This is somewhere where we really think that this bill should be permanent. If this does end up causing any issues, bills can always be amended, or laws can always be amended or repealed. Our position is, why not just start with making it permanent? If that doesn't happen, then we're going to have to go through this all over again 4 years from now. And we could end up with a period without rent stabilization just because of bureaucratic issues, disagreements over exactly how it should be rewritten. So we really need this to be a permanent bill. The second point is that this bill has a 10% max on rent increases. So that's broken down as 5% plus the inflation over the last year, up to a maximum of 10%. So at least 5% would always be allowed. In a year like last year where there was high inflation, 10% would be allowed. And when we listened to Dr. Ball introduce this bill at his press conference about it, he stated that rents in the county have gone up by an average of 23% over the last 3 years. And we agree with him that that is a huge number. Unfortunately, Under this bill, as it's currently written, the limit would have been higher than that. It would have been about 26% over that same 3-year period. So although this bill could protect some tenants from these really huge rent increases that a few people are seeing, it would not do much to stabilize the whole market over the long term. And then that brings us to the third point, which is that it leaves out a lot of tenants entirely. As we already mentioned, there is a 20-year new construction exemption, which means that all of the new apartments you see popping up in this neighborhood and around the county would not even be covered until the 2040s. In looking at the data from last year's Howard County rental survey, we calculated that 30% of rental apartments in the county have been built in the last 20 years. So just with that one exemption alone, you are leaving out a huge percentage of renters. Can you go to the next one? Right, so there are actually 11 different categories of exemptions in this bill. I'm not going to go through every one of them. I just talked about the new construction one. 2 others I wanted to highlight are there's an exemption for nonprofit-owned housing. And this one is going to become even more important because another part of the home package introduced by the county executive is expanding the county's ability to purchase rental units that go up for sale and also being able to transfer that to other entities such as nonprofits. So if that goes ahead, we may be having a lot more nonprofit-owned housing in the future, which would make this a more important category to think about. And then another one is small landlords who rent out 5 or fewer units. Now this is one that is very common across different rent stabilization laws in different places. There's often some form of exemption for small landlords. However, what we found is that this is on the high end. It's typically the limit is somewhere between 2 and 4 units. So we really think this limit should at least be reduced a bit. Is that the last?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So as we've said, you know, it's great that something is finally happening on rent stabilization. We definitely are not against this bill. But as you've seen, this bill in its current form, it's leaving out so many people. It has such a high rent cap, and it's temporary that it's not really going to do that much to protect all of the renters in our community, which is why we're encouraging everyone to come testify, tell your own stories, talk about anything you're really passionate about, and especially these points that could make the bill stronger.
Okay. Yep. So just emphasizing that. Oh wait, do you have anything else?
Do we want to? I think someone had a question. Do we want to take questions at this point?
Let me check our time. It's 6:55. Yeah, we're good. We have a few minutes to spare.
Yeah, we can take a question.
Real quick, the small landlord.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of provision in there for subsidiaries, small corporations? Because one thing that developers will do, and have done, is create these subsidiaries, say, well, now we're a small landlord, so we're exempt. That's how they've gotten around other kinds of
Loopholes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I believe this bill does specify that it's a natural person with 5 or fewer units. However, there are other exemption categories that we hadn't run through, so they may fit under something else. You know, the more loopholes there are, the more chances there are for people to find things like that.
Very impressive. Okay. Anything else before we move on? Do you guys want to ask any questions about the bill or anything like that?
You mentioned that the bill is currently written, and so
Mhm.
who are the people responsible or involved in the writing of this document?
So the bill was introduced by the county executive, Dr. Calvin Ball, so I believe it was him and his staff initially writing that. But now the county council has the chance to introduce and vote on amendments before they ultimately vote on whether to pass the bill.
And who's going to be heading up the amendments and getting this, trying to get this adjusted to what you just
Right.
told?
So we have our list of what we're suggesting.
Could you repeat the question?
Oh, yes.
Who's going to be in charge?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Blair will repeat it so they can hear you.
Right, yes. So the question was, who's going to be in charge of writing and introducing those amendments? Was that the question?
Pushing it through.
And pushing it through. Yes. So we have our list of what we're suggesting. We have started the process of meeting with the county council members. And then the public hearing on Monday is the main opportunity for any member of the public to come have 3 minutes to talk to, with all of them present, say what you think needs to be amended about this bill.
So who is it again?
That's
the person you said. Who's in charge?
Oh, the county council, so there's a council of 5 members who run all the county law.
Right, so they're like the legislators at the county level. So they will be the ones approving the final bill. Yeah.
Would you happen to know if the executive or any of the council members are renters themselves?
That's a good so the question was, are any of the council members or the county executive renters themselves? I don't know the answer to that for sure. Not to my knowledge, though.
The ones that I know all have houses.
Yeah. Yes?
Hi, what department is going to be responsible for enforcing and administrating this law?
So the question was, what department is going to be responsible for enforcing the law? And they were going to be adding a new division within consumer protection.
I think so, that sounds right.
Yeah. They wrote as part a document accompanying the bill, a budget for 3 people who would be in charge of any enforcement issues related to this bill.
Mm-hmm. That was actually another thing that we wanted to emphasize about the bill. Was, I don't know if you want to touch on that quickly about like the kind of smaller things like Jim Hubbard was pointing out. Did we want to touch on that or not so much? Like amendments that would strengthen and clarify the language to allow it to be enforced?
Yes, so I believe we're going to follow up with sending all of you our full list of information about all the recommended changes. There are some other areas where the bill honestly just needs to be clarified. For example, there is a section called fair return, and that is basically a section of the bill that intends to make sure that landlords are not going to lose money on renting. However, it's written pretty vaguely. It's not really clear, like, would they have to lose money or would they just have to profit less than they did the year before in order to qualify for that exemption? And what would the process be for applying for that? And what would the notice be to the tenants? So there is a version of that from another rent stabilization law in another area that we thought was far more clear. So we'll follow up with that.
Yeah, so the idea being like that's another thing that we could focus on at public testimony. That would basically kind of double down on that enforcement feature of the bill that we wanted to be introduced. Because, like, yes, there's a division for enforcement, but we have to make sure that the law itself also makes it very clear and obvious how it can be enforced. So that, that's just more loopholes, like we were saying. I think we're good. We were expecting another speaker, but I think we can just move on for now. So, hello again, everyone on Zoom. What's up? Being recorded. Got it. So, so we're gonna move on to opening the floor to tenants to share their stories, basically talk about, you can talk about this bill, you can talk about what matters to you about rent stabilization. If you choose to, you can use it as an opportunity to practice. Am I too close or far away? Whatever. What you might say at a public testimony on Monday, November 20th, 7 p.m. Does anyone forget already? I'm going to tell you again. But, okay, so basically we're going to allow everyone 3 minutes to have their time, and like if we have time to circle around, if anyone has more thoughts that they'd like to share, we can definitely do that again, but want to make sure that anyone who wants to speak has the opportunity to speak. We have some folks who are virtual. Do you bring a speaker?
Speaker, no.
Okay, so we're gonna have to figure that out. But we are gonna have the opportunity for people to share here, and I think we can actually maybe pull it up on my computer, perhaps, but we'll figure that out. So we're gonna start with the person who is here in person, and you can come up over here so that the people on Zoom can hear you. And then we'll kind of alternate between in-person and virtual speakers. Sound good? Great. Okay. Does anyone feel like coming up and speaking? Diana? Okay, yeah, so introduce yourself in whatever way you please to be known by everyone.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Diana. Thank you guys for coming out. And you can hear me?
Yes, no, I can.
I've been in Howard County for quite a long time. Where I live at now, the development that I live at, I'm gonna say I've given them 20 years of tenancy business. 18 of them have been consecutive. And my lease just ran out a few months ago, and like 90 days prior to that, I was left a notice on my door hinged in between the doorknob and the door frame, and it was just letting me know that your rent is gonna go up. I lived in a 3-bedroom townhouse. It had 2 floors, no basement. And I was like, okay. And I'm gonna just be frank, it was $2,200, and they're telling me it's going up to $3,448. That's over 50%. And I'm like, and what? I was like, you want me to go from $2,200 to $2,448, and then if I didn't accept that annual lease again, it would be a month to month at an extra $200, so it's like 36. Like, what are you guys telling me here? So, I had reached out to council members and politicians, and of course they said that they couldn't do anything because there's no rent cap. So then I sent a nice letter to the leasing office property manager explaining my history, because they just got there. They just started working there. I don't even know if they've been there a year now. And explaining her, I've raised my children here. They all have grown up and graduated school in Howard County. I have my 16-year-old who's left, the last one, and she doesn't go to school here. She's been blessed to go to private school because of academics and athletic-wise, but she still likes living here. So I just told them that I'm not staying. Who can afford this? And then a 90-day notice, I can't afford that. Who can afford that? And, it's unfortunate that this room is not packed, because it's not going to just affect the current renters. It's going to affect our kids if they want to stay here. It's going to affect your grandchildren. And then this law now, 10%. Come on, let's do the math, 10%. You're there for a year, 10%. If you stay, 10%. When does that stop? And that doesn't include, I pay water, trash, sewage, renter's insurance, gas, electric, so, and so when I sent this extensive email to the property manager, I think I got a phone call within a couple minutes, and you know, of course, she was working out a deal for me to stay and whatever, what have you. And it served me well, but I'm not just here for me. You know, I'm here for you all that are sitting out here, whether you're renters or not. It's going to affect the kids if they want to stay, you know. So that's my story, you know.
Perfect time.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, if you don't mind, do you know if there's been a change in ownership of your property you rent?
I know that some people's rent has gone up $300, $200. Like they're starting to get the rents for these properties, $3,000 for a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom townhouse, whatever. So it's happening. So we need to be in this room packed out and pushing back, not in a disrespectful way, but you know, our politicians, even if you're not a tenant, I think you should be here listening to what the tenants have to say, because this bill that's being proposed, it's good luck, you know. So I plan on leaving in 2 years. Once my daughter graduates high school and goes to college, I can't stay here, you know. So, you know. But thank you for listening.
Thank you, Diana.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm gonna try, do we have someone virtually who would like to share next? Also, I don't know, oh, it's because it's a speaker, okay. I'm just gonna see if this works. Okay, does someone feel brave and feel like unmuting just to like see if the speakers are working? Oh, can you even hear me right now?
Hold
I'm
on.
muted.
They're not, let me turn on, okay, people can unmute.
Wait, hold on, I don't have my volume on. Hold on, guys. I'm sorry. Hold on, I can see you're trying. Wait. Dang.
Hey Ryan, I
Oh.
can hear you. Thank you for.
Okay, that's just my computer. But
But yeah, I think you're wondering if anybody on Zoom was willing to potentially tell their story. I know Tim, for example, has been commenting.
he's talking to the Zoom folks. Maybe we'll wait a moment. We can go to someone here if no one virtually feels like they want to say anything. Jake, is that the case?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so yeah, we can just, does anyone else who is here want to share anything?
I'll share.
Awesome.
Hi, my name's John Migliori, and I've been a resident of Howard County for 40 years now. So it's been a little while. But I've just gotten into the rental situation about 6 years ago, and moved to the Metropolitan, right in next to the mall. And Ryan Duff is one of my neighbors. I'm sure he's calling in to talk about it. However, we had some extreme hikes. When we got involved in the lease, we knew there was no cap. I mean, you read it, you know this, you know. But you think it's going to be reasonable. And it was in the beginning. You know, we would get 3 and 5, maybe 6%, or it was in that 3 to 5% range. And then COVID hit. And then they had to hold things back a little bit, and they claimed they've lost money, things weren't going as well. And the rent increases just went crazy. And they got so bad, they were up to 40%, you know, anywhere from 20 to 40%. So Ryan, myself, and a few other people, we put flyers around the entire building, 400 flyers to all under the doors of everybody, got everyone together to try to see what we can do to combat this. We got Jessica Feldman, Senator Lamb, Delegate Ebersol, Deb Young. We pulled a bunch of people together to discuss what's going on. And the fact is, they can do whatever they want. We have zero rights. And then we got together and tried to go to WBAL. We went to all the different news stations. We sent all this information out, and we got no response. No one wanted to deal with it. And then we dug in deeper. Now, I'm a former real estate guy, so developer, home builder, real estate. So I kind of know a little bit of what's going on. Interesting enough, they have a software package that sets off algorithms. And I say they, I mean the developers, you know, the Kettlers, the big guys, that goes around and tests what's available in all the different buildings in the area. Are they short on 1 bedrooms? Do they have a surplus of 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms? And what their prices are. And they price them accordingly. So there's only, let's say 7 3-bedrooms around, all of a sudden they go up very high. Now, in the old days, in real estate principles, they would almost assume or kind of think that was kind of price fixing when we all got together and say, what are you charging? What are you charging? Okay, why don't we all get together and charge this? That was frowned upon. But this algorithm software system has allowed that to come true and be legal. So there's a lot of different aspects to what we're trying to do today. I love the proposal. Hats off to you. I tried a few years ago to push this to the limits.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I met with Deb, Deb. Yeah, we did a lot of work. Looked into the Montgomery County bill to see where they were headed, and didn't make a whole lot of progress. But we really do need it because the fact is, I got a veteran in my building. All of a sudden, $700 increase. He had to be kicked out. He had to go out. There was a homeless guy in my garage, the Metropolitan. I brought him in one night to sleep, gave him some clothes. It's ridiculous what's going on, and it's all about the dollar bill. It's a shame because I have a lot of friends in this building industry, and they might have 200 or 300 units, and they're not doing this. They're not doing okay, we're going to raise it to 13%. My last year was 16%. The year before was 14%. But they're not doing it. They're still sticking to the 3 to 5%. It's these big conglomerates that are sticking it to us, and pretty bad. Since I've been in the business for 40 years now, I know a lot of people doing just that, renting. And yes, they do have more than 5 units, but they're not taking it to this extreme. So we do need to somehow reel this in, and it's going to take a village to do it. But I take my hats off to you guys. That's why I was wondering who's in charge, who's pushing this, because I'd like to help support them.
We would love to have you.
Yeah,
So-
and that's another thing. We're definitely also looking for volunteers tonight. It sounds like, that's kind of the same thing that happened to me. I lived at 10M Flats right next door,
Yeah,
and
my neighbor.
I was hit by a...
Did you get my flyer?
No, I don't think you got our building.
I
but-
tried. Marco wouldn't let me in.
Yeah, 50% rent increase. So as soon as I heard people were starting to organize around this, and I attempted to negotiate that with them when they hit me with this 50%. I went from 1334 to almost 2,000.
That's just real
50%
stuff, guys. What you're
increase.
hearing is totally
Yeah.
real.
And I attempted to negotiate, and I went out. I had like 6 days to make a decision. That's how little notice they gave me. And that's not legal anymore, luckily. But
It's supposed to be, 60.
yeah, I came back to them. I spent the weekend looking at other places, and I was like, hey, I saw that the market has gone up, but not this much. Can we negotiate on this at all? And they said, oh, well, I understand why you would want to move when you're seeing those lower prices, but just understand that when your renewal comes up there, they're probably just going to do the same thing. So they're just setting us up, bait and switch. So, I've moved almost every year since moving out of my parents' house because you've got to,
It's ridiculous.
to
And
have
when you
this law.
still talk to the president of Kettler, because I had to deal with somebody, along the group, you would talk to the upper management, higher management. I met with Greg from Howard Hughes. I walked the building and pointed out, not are they just not being fair with the rent increases, they're no longer taking care of the amenities. So you say, wait a minute, $700, yours went up 500, yours was 50%.
Yeah.
And then you go to start the grill. and it doesn't work. And then I'm walking with, you know, all the management, and I'm saying, the girls don't, yes, they do. I'm like, no, well, start it. That's embarrassing when you got Greg Fetch, I think his last name is, from Hughes, and it can't start. I'm like, you know, I tested all this before we walked this. I'm not stupid. I was bored tonight, one last night. I knew what they were going to work. So I gave them the full list of stuff to do, and it still haven't seen any improvements. Very little.
Would this cause more vacancies? I mean,
It's supply and demand, really easy to, yeah, it's because you can walk distance to bars and restaurants, it's, you got everything is pretty easy there. And the algorithms,
I'm gonna take a moment if you wanna come back.
oh yeah, no, I'm fine, I gotta go anyway. Thanks for letting me talk, but I got a question.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you so much, go ahead, yeah.
Okay. So,
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. So really quickly, I want to introduce our other speaker. We have Councilman Martin Mitchell with us today. And he is a councilman in Laurel. So he is going to kind of speak on or I'm hoping he'll speak on, kind of like the experience of passing the bill in Prince George's County. And for context, Prince George's County has a stronger bill than Montgomery, but it is only 1 year, I think. So I'm hoping he'll speak on that, and then also the impact that tenant stories made in that fight to get the bill passed. So thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much. So we have Zoom people here, just so you know. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Greetings. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be in the neighboring county. As she probably mentioned, I'm from Prince George's County, but Laurel, and so Laurel has the benefit of spanning through 4 counties, Howard County being one of them. I can say that, you know, at length, I've talked to Jake and, you know, many members in Howard County about, you know, the rent stabilization and, you know, fair housing, you know, as well as, you know, some of the council members, like Christiana Rigby. You know, every time I, you know, get in front of her, I try to, you know, nudge her and, you know, remind her that, you know, rent stabilization is coming down the pipeline. I think that one of the things that she wanted me to talk about and kind of just started from the back was how important the tenant stories are. The tenant stories are extremely important. And so for me, the rent stabilization movement started in the city of Laurel. It started at 332 11th Street when I got a call. I think it was from, I want to say it was from Trent Learman from CASA. And shortly after, I got a call from Delegate Peanut Melnick's office, Edith Perry, if anybody knows Edith. You know, the real superstars of the staff, right? And so, you know, Edith reached out and she said that there was a problem going on at this apartment building. It's about 10 units. And I think at this point there was about 7 seniors left. They had a new landlord who had come in, and he basically, you know, called himself upgrading the apartment, but doubling the rent, like essentially overnight. And, you know, the problem was a lot of these people weren't new tenants, they were renewals. Some of them had lived in the building 20, 30, 40 years, you know. So we were able to do boiler room style negotiations over a few weeks, and, you know, we had ARPA money to help supplement some of that. One of the things we found out, in the state of Maryland that handshake lease agreements are legal, right? And so, like, a lot of people are surprised by that. Wait, handshake lease agreements are legal? Yes. You know, handshake lease agreements are legal in the state of Maryland. And so what we found out is some of these people had lived there 30 years, but they couldn't find the actual lease. So it's like, oh, where's the actual lease? And, you know, it was like 5 landlords ago. And so, like, it is important. You know, that's one of the things that, you know, I'm advocating for at the city level, but, you know, at the state level and the county level, you know, to mandate that, you know, we have written leases, you know, even for month to month. Because some people would say then, oh, we could do it for, people who are on a year lease or 15 month, a year lease or 15-month lease, but we don't want to do it for people who are on a month by month. I think that there should be clarity, for both the landlord, and the tenant, right? Like there shouldn't be a gray area, and you should be able to refer to your lease if you know there is any discrepancy, any problem. Of course, if there is a written lease. And so, the tenant stories are important. Going back to the tenant stories, because in Laurel, we weren't able to, pass rent stabilization in the city because, as any legislative body works, you need to coalesce, enough members of the legislative body to pass that, that policy, right? And so we had, I think it was like 1,000 petition signatures through the community. That was strong. We had people pack out the hearing rooms. That was strong. But essentially, I will tell you one thing that is stronger is the housing lobby. The housing lobby is very strong, right? And so, like, the reason it's important for, you guys to come out is because, I'll be frank with you guys, the housing and development lobby has a firm interest in electoral politics, right? And so just being frank, follow the money. Right, a lot of times, people don't say that, and when they say that, they don't follow up with that, right? So look at the different politicians and, see they're receiving money from developers or landlords and, why their interest or their policy positions or their ideology on this might not change, right? And so those true stories are important because I've met with a lot of those landlord lobbyists, a lot of those development lobbyists. And, as a legislator, you got to be fair, right? You got to meet with the people, but you also have to meet with the business owners, right? And so I heard a lot of their concerns, and kind of to the point, my point is they were very inflexible. Like they didn't want any type of, they didn't want to give up any type of control, as they called it. Right, one of the conversations we had, because we always met at restaurants, we wanted to make sure to meet in public areas. So, there was no backroom dealings or anything like that. People could say, hey, I saw, the council members meeting with the lobbyists and they were meeting in the public area, right? So we want to make sure that happened. And one of the things that I, said to them when they were getting enraged, like, you guys don't try to control any other industry, but you're trying to control housing, right? One of the things I reminded them, a lot of times they say that we're supposed to pay 30% of your income, your monthly income towards where you're staying, your residence housing, and I was reminding them, of course, like during the pandemic, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, inflation was a lot worse, and I was reminding them, even if you're screaming about the rate of inflation, you guys are charging 30, 40, 60% increases, right? And I was saying for me it wasn't about you guys just charging more, but it was about the rate of change. And the rate of change for these individuals, because of course I remind them it's like their income didn't change. If anything, their income went down, right? And so, one of the things that, those people solidified is those people are the market. So when, the landlords came up and they were upset because they had tenants who were telling real stories. They had tenants who came with paperwork, right? And I will tell you that, like, one of the things that I told the landlords is I will continue to lobby for the constituents in my community because those landlords, 9 times out of 10, they were from out of state, out of the county, sometimes even out of the country, right? And so, like, when our community and the makeup of our community changes because of, greed in some instances, right? Because I think that a lot of the bills, and even the bill that we wrote, it allowed for exemptions. It allowed for a board in which, like, if they needed to do major updates, they can then, go to the board and, the same way that, you would have to report a loss of income, to, the state of Maryland if you want to get unemployment insurance, right? And so it's saying, hey, I want to raise it above 5% because I have to make this major upgrade and, I have to be able to pay back this loan in this time. Oh, that makes sense, right? Like, but a lot of times when I spoke to the landlords, when I spoke to the developers, they weren't really willing to even open their books or, have a discussion about that. A lot of times it was like, you don't need to know that information. Because some of the things that I would ask them, and I said, well, prior to the pandemic, like how much of an increase would you charge them each year? and a few of them said, a few of them told me that what their rates were, because a lot of times you could just look this up, right? But what they would tell me was, for the most part, they didn't see the rate of change, stifling the market. And then, I came back and I said, well, we see that Social Security went up, right? And so in these market rate apartments, I see that you guys are now trying to charge, these seniors more money because you believe that they could pay more money because Social Security went up, right? And so, mind you, it doesn't just affect, young people, young professionals, and families. It definitely affects seniors. And so I would say that the tenant stories are important because it reminds it and it humanizes the issue, because I'm sure you guys have seen in DC about the rent collusion, right? Like, that happens everywhere. Like, and that was the funny thing, is I remind, the real estate investors that you guys control the market. You guys fix the market. You guys go to conferences and talk about like how much more you can make for, this property in this area based on this square footage. Like, why aren't you charging more, right? And so, one guy does it. He tests the market. Oh, he can get that much for this. Oh, so we're all going to go up. I mean, like, I'm not saying that it's not capitalism, but it is capitalism, right? And so, like, just to be fair, we still need to protect, the people in this community. When I say this community, I mean, the greater community, not just the city of Laurel, not just Prince George's. We've done it in Montgomery County. We definitely hope to do it in Howard, and, then Baltimore County, Baltimore City. One of the things that I tell people is rent stabilization isn't the only policy that is going to solve like the housing issue, right? And so, like, yes, it will be a win, and it's something that we can continue to work on, right? It's not going to be a perfect policy, but there's other things that we can do. Just cause is something that we're fighting for at the state level, because what we will say is it's difficult to pass these rent stabilization laws, right, and not have some type of vacancy control or just cause laws, right? Especially what we see is kind of retaliatory evictions sometimes, and retaliatory evictions are very difficult to prove, right? I will tell you that retaliatory evictions are very difficult to prove. And so, that is going to be a push, I know, for Renters United Maryland to make sure we pass just cause laws at the state of Maryland, but definitely come out and make your voice heard. Use that 2 minutes wisely. If you can't make it, write in. You know what I mean? I have seen hearts change because of testimonies. And I will tell you that, like, I've even seen testimonies of like teenagers and, elementary school students, because at the end of the day, you might think that, like, your kids, of course I got twins, you see over there. You might think that your kids don't see you struggling, right? But your kids sometimes know when things are going on, right? They know when, mom and dad is not happy, right? And, they might not understand the kitchen table issues, but they're affected by it, right? Like, they realize that, hey, you have to work longer hours, or, I have to switch school districts because I no longer can afford to live in this school district, right? And so that's one of the things that I remind people that, those student voices and those student experiences are important as well. And so definitely you want to highlight that, because, that's very important, making sure that, the kids continue their continuity in their education and, have their friend groups and, aren't ripped apart, because of, housing insecurity. And yeah, I don't know if I answered it completely, but yes, yes we can. And any questions? Any thoughts? Okay.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much, Councilman, for sharing that. I think that's super important to hear the story of how Prince George's, closer? Am I good? Okay. Of how that fight went and how impactful tenants were in that fight. Like, we need to be in the public hearing. We need to show them, like, this is the face of the person that you think it's okay for me to be displaced. You think it's okay in the name of development for me to not have my home anymore. So to make them look at us and say that that's what they're going to do, I think that's a really powerful thing. I think next, I also wanted to say, sorry, that was like, didn't want to worry anyone, that another exemption in the bill that is currently being discussed
is senior living facilities are excluded and nursing homes are excluded. So to follow up on the councilman's point, seniors are definitely not protected adequately in this bill. I think we have a virtual person who is able to speak. Tim? Yes, awesome, thank you. Oh, and I'm gonna turn up my computer audio, and then you guys tell me if you can hear him, okay? Oh wait, hold up.
Rented in Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and currently Howard County. When I was renting in Montgomery County, I was paying about $13.90. It was about 2 years ago, and I had to move out because they were about to raise it by about 18%, which I thought was as high as it could get. I didn't realize they were going to raise it even higher. And at the time, this was before Montgomery County passed the rent stabilization bill. They had what's called rent guidelines, where they basically recommended that landlords don't raise their rents by more than 5%. And it was even on a letter that I got saying that my rent is going up by 18%. And at the top of the notice it said, recommended rent guidelines no more than 5%. Now, I've certainly got a bridge to sell anybody if they think that developers are going to listen to what the council recommends they do in terms of raising rents. But I joined the DSA and the rent stabilization efforts in Montgomery County too, and knocking on doors to get people to testify at those hearings, it was absolutely stunning because seeing about a third of the doors I knocked on have eviction notices. It was utterly sad.
Wow.
And like a third of them had eviction notices. You'd see plenty more that had late rent notices or final rent notices before eviction. And it was just stunning to see where people are in so many apartments. So then I moved to Prince George's County, and I basically lived in the apartment from hell. It was roaches on day one. The towel bar was broken. There was a new ownership group that bought them and basically named the landlord the LLC of the apartments. And they gave us bills that were blatantly against our lease. Our lease had said that it was rent plus a $30 charge for water. And they all of a sudden, out of nowhere, started giving us these utility bills claiming that they were metering our apartments, even though everybody had the same amounts, for like $150 just out of the blue. And they even gave me a bill that claimed that I used $150 of utilities when I had moved up for that month, when I moved out on the 5th of that month. And I moved into my next place before that. So I literally only set foot in the building about twice. So then I moved to Howard County, and I had to pay a little bit more in rent because obviously rent is going up everywhere. So now I'm paying about $1,900. But in my increase from $1,300 to $1,900, my salary has only gone up by a very minuscule amount, about $3,000. So if they don't pass a rent increase of under, say, 5%, like if they raise the rate by 10%, I'm going to have to look for a new job because that's just where things are right now. But that's all I got.
Thank you so much, Tim. Sorry, my audio is messed up. Thank you so much. Okay, does anyone here feel moved to say anything about their experience, maybe practice for the public testimony? November 20th, 7 p.m., that's Monday. November 20th, 7 p.m. That's Monday.
Is there a reason why they scheduled that for a Monday evening before Thanksgiving?
The question was, is there a reason that it was scheduled a Monday evening before Thanksgiving? I think Blair is going to answer.
Yeah, it's just the normal schedule that the first Monday they read the bills in, and then 2 weeks later, I believe. So they just didn't move it for the holiday.
Or they don't want people to testify?
Yeah. That's the way I look at it. Yes, no, go ahead. I'm just looking. I don't know where to go.
I'm good to speak?
Yeah, go ahead. That's Jose.
Hey guys, I'm Jose. I'm with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. We're a part of the Rent Stabilization Coalition. And I just want to talk to you all about housing as a general concept, because we all need housing to live. We cannot live without housing. We can't live houseless. And housing is not a commodity. It's not something to be speculated on. It's not something to be bought and sold. It is a human right. And let me talk about like why landlords, why this system that landlords have is set up the way that it is. Landlords need the threat of houselessness to keep these rents competitive. That's the bottom line of it, right? They need you to fear being houselessness so that they can keep on increasing your rents these crazy amounts. And they can't expect the economy here to function if, you know, working people that make the economy run can't pay their rents, right? And so I say to you again, this is kind of a short speech, short and sweet, but housing is a human right. It is a necessity. It is not negotiable. You know, we have to be strong and firm in our conviction, and we have to all, you know, show out here. And that's all I gotta say.
No, thank you so much. Okay, I want to make a last call. If anyone would like to say anything virtually or in person, if anyone would like to take a few minutes. If not, Jake is going to give a little something about what's it called? Public testimony.
Public hearing.
The public hearing on Monday. Just going to give a little bit more context there.
So, before I do that, I see we were just joined by another tenant I recognize from just this weekend. So, before we close out tenant stories, I'm curious, did you want to come, you know, no, that's okay. Well, yeah, thank you everybody for coming in person and virtually. You know, thank you for everybody who just, you know, opened up and shared their story about why they're here. Clearly, it's an issue impacting lots of different people in the county. And so to that end, it's great everybody showed up and, you know, told their stories, but where is most important that people show up and tell their stories is to the county council members themselves, because as we could see with this presentation, there's quite a lot of problems with the bill, but the good news is the bill has not been voted on yet. The bill still can be amended, but the thing is, I'm curious by a show of hands, how many people here have gotten a text message over the last week or two from some group called the National Apartment Association villainizing rent control? I see Diana got one. Blair, so quite a couple. I saw somebody in the chat said that that's actually how they found out about our coalition and this town hall. So hopefully it backfires there. But all of that is to say that the landlords are mobilizing. We think that this bill is not good enough, but even a watered down bill is too much for the landlords, and they don't care that it's watered down. They want to see this bill die completely. There are other people who are okay with the watered down rent stabilization bill, don't want to see it be improved anymore. Both of those two groups are going to be out in full force at this public hearing on the bill 5 days from now, Monday, November 20th at 7 p.m. It's our job, it's our coalition's job that we have more people there at this public hearing with a stronger, more powerful message of why we do need a bill, and we need a bill that's much stronger than what we have today. And so the only way that we can overpower the powerful landlord lobby is with numbers. And so that's why, again, we need as many of us as possible, even if you're not a tenant. I'm not a tenant, I still live with my parents, but this is still an issue that's very, important to me. And so, yes, Mary.
Question, something I didn't think of before. Would anyone be maybe not feeling like sharing their own experience, but perhaps like willing to, if we write something like, about like the specifics of the bill, like that you personally like feel passionate about. Of course, it's not just like made up, but like if we kind of help you with that, would anyone be comfortable at least like being there and like advocating on a certain point? about the bill that we want to be amended.
Yeah, I certainly do that.
Amazing. Carla, do you think you can get information just to make sure? Okay. Anyone else feel comfortable? You can also do it virtually. And you can also submit a written comment.
There was a question on the sign-in form about whether they wanted help writing a testimony.
Yes. Yeah. I just thought like maybe people think that it's just about, you know, their experience with rent stabilization when that's not necessarily the case. It's just making the case as a tenant, as a citizen, that the bill should be stronger. And, you know, we can help you outline the ways in which that needs to happen.
Yeah, to be clear, you do not yourself have to be a tenant to still testify on this issue. Again, I'm technically not a tenant. I'm still definitely going to be testifying on Monday, November 20th. And so again, if you agree with our concerns about this bill not providing adequate protections for tenants, would strongly encourage you to testify. And I understand, especially for people who've never done this sort of thing, you know, politics isn't for them. They've never been to a county hearing. Again, there is an option to do it virtually. It's more impactful if you do it in person, but I understand that it might be a little bit intimidating if you've never done it before. And so to that end, I even went ahead, the coalition went ahead and we prepared, and I would encourage everybody to take one of these before you leave today, papers that have both instructions, step-by-step instructions on how to sign up to testify this Monday, where the address is, how to do it virtually, how to do it in person. And then also on this document's front and back is a sample testimony that, you know, people can also email in testimony, but again, it's much more powerful if you deliver it yourself verbally, whether virtually or in person. So also on this form is a template testimony that you can read, and, you know, you don't have to go off of it verbatim. Feel free to stray from it. It's just, you know, something to fall back on, and you can, you know, sort of put in your own personal details if you want. And so I'm going to make one last ask here and one last call to action, again, understanding that this is the only way that we're going to be able to get this bill changed. So, and we're willing to give rides on Monday, November 20th, who, if they have the assistance to help with writing the testimony, which we are willing to provide that assistance, and if they have a ride, who here is able to commit to, you know, testifying this upcoming Monday to strengthen the bill, just so I can get a mental head count of who to, you know, follow up with afterwards. But even if you don't feel comfortable testifying on Monday, we'd still love to follow up with people because, you know, the fight's not over after Monday. The bill is technically supposed to be voted on Monday, December 4th, but we've been meeting with council members and we've been given a hint that the vote might be delayed into January. And so all that is to say is we might still have a couple more months of a fight on our hands. And so Monday is very important for that fight. But even if you can't be there, we definitely love to connect with you more even after Monday. And so, again, just to reiterate that call, please be there on Monday. Jay, you got your hand up.
So is there a possibility they could vote on final passage on Monday?
No, they have to go through a legislative process, and so they're not going to just force the vote on Monday. They have to wait a couple weeks after that. Yes, Eduardo?
I think it would be nice to remind everyone that you guys had a Spanish version of the
Yes.
template.
Yes.
If anybody has neighbors who are Spanish speakers, would be willing to.
Yes.
Yeah.
To reiterate that, we do have a Spanish version of the template he was saying. If, you know, you feel more comfortable testifying in Spanish, you can look at the same information, and you can also have your testimony translated at the county hearing. So just to be super clear, thank you so much for that
Yes.
reminder.
Thank you, Eduardo. So before we head out, and again, especially for the people that raised their hands to testify on Monday, I know some of you already did sign up with us on the laptops, but if you raised your hand and you have not signed up to testify, please, got 2 laptops right there in front of me, so please go over to that table and please fill it out. Again, even if you can't testify on Monday, if you didn't fill out the sign-in forms on the table on the right with the QR code, please do that because we need to keep this conversation going. This is how we build tenant power. This is how change happens. And so, unless there are any final comments, questions, or concerns, we may be ready to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So,
I think we're good.
yes, thank you all.
Thank you
you
so
all
much
for
for
coming.
being here.